"Don't make a sound," my son's real estate attorney whispered as he pulled me into the coat closet of the conference room. "I need you to see this first." I didn't even have time to argue. 1 second I was standing in the hallway of Meridian Title and Trust on Briarwood Avenue, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, and the next second I was pressed between someone's wool overcoat and a fire extinguisher. The door clicked shut in front of me, and I was in the dark. I am 63 years old. I have buried a husband, raised a son alone for 11 years, and driven through 3 hurricanes. I do not hide in closets, and yet there I was. His name is Martin, the attorney. He's been my son's lawyer since Connor bought his first property at 28, a duplex in Columbus that Connor fixed up on weekends with his own hands. Martin is careful, methodical, the kind of man who checks the fine print on a restaurant receipt. He does not panic. He does not whisper. So when he whispered, I listened. Through the thin gap where the closet door didn't quite meet the frame, I could see a sliver of the conference room. A long oak table. Leather chairs. The kind of room that smells like ambition and carpet cleaner. And I could see her. Serena, my son's fiancée of 14 months, sitting across from a man I had never seen before, leaning forward on her elbows the way she never did when Connor was around. She was wearing the ivory blouse she'd worn to our church potluck last Easter. I remember thinking it looked expensive then. I remember thinking she seemed nervous then too, but I'd told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't imagining anything. I need to back up. Because none of this makes sense unless you understand what that morning was supposed to be. Connor had been saving for 4 years to buy his first house. Not a duplex to rent out. Not a flip, but a real home. Something permanent. He'd found a colonial on Elmhurst Drive with a big yard and original hardwood floors and a kitchen that needed everything replaced, which suited him fine because Connor has always loved fixing things. The closing was scheduled for 9 o'clock that morning. He and Serena were buying it together as an engaged couple, signing joint paperwork for the first time. He'd asked me to come. Not because he needed me there legally, but because he said he wanted me to be part of it. My son is like that. Even at 34, even with a good job and a woman he loved, he still wanted his mother in the room for the important moments. His father would have been there too if Richard hadn't passed 6 years ago. Heart attack, 58 years old, no warning at all. Just here one morning and gone by afternoon. I still reach for the phone sometimes to call him about things like this. A house closing, a son doing well. I still think Richard would have loved to see this. I arrived at Meridian Title at 8:40. Connor wasn't there yet. He'd texted to say he was running 5 minutes behind, stuck behind a school bus on Henderson Road. I got my coffee from the little hospitality table in the lobby and waited. That's when Martin appeared at my elbow. Close. Too close, the way people stand when they're about to tell you something they don't want overheard. "Mrs. Calloway," he said quietly, "I'm glad you're here early. I need to show you something before Connor arrives, and I need you to stay calm." I looked at him. 20 years I've known this man, and he has never once asked me to stay calm. He led me down the hall toward the main conference room, then stopped just outside the door, which was open by a few inches. He tilted his head toward the gap. I looked. Serena was inside. She'd arrived before either of us, apparently, before Connor, before the title company staff had even finished setting up the room. She was on her phone, turned away from the door, speaking in a low voice that I could just barely make out. It closes today, I told you. By noon, we'll have the keys. His name is on the mortgage too, so it's clean. It's completely clean. You just have to be patient. A pause. Because I handled it. I handled all of it. Do you understand what I've given up to be here? Don't call this number again until I tell you to. She hung up, smoothed her blouse, picked up her own coffee cup, and turned back toward the table like nothing had happened. Martin took my elbow and steered me gently backward, away from the door. He didn't say anything until we were around the corner. "That's not the first call like that," he said. "My paralegal was in there earlier, setting out the paperwork. She heard the same thing, exact same phrases. It's clean. Be patient. Don't call this number." I felt cold. Not afraid exactly. More like the feeling you get when you're driving and you realize too late that the road is icy. That particular kind of dread where your body knows before your mind catches up. "Who is she talking to?" I asked. Martin opened a folder he'd been holding against his side. Inside was a printed document, looked like a record search of some kind. He'd highlighted several lines in yellow. "I started pulling background on Serena Whitfield 3 weeks ago," he said. "Connor asked me to draw up a cohabitation agreement before the closing in case things didn't work out before the wedding. Standard stuff. But when I ran her information, I found something that didn't line up." He handed me the folder. "I'm not a lawyer. I'm a retired middle school librarian from Dayton, Ohio. I don't read legal documents easily." But what Martin was showing me was not complicated. It was, in fact, very simple. Serena Whitfield had a lien on a property in Savannah, Georgia. Filed 22 months ago, the lien had been placed by a man named Douglas Pritchard for unpaid personal loans totaling $68,000, and Douglas Pritchard's current address was listed as the same Savannah property. "He lives there?" I asked. "He owns it, has for 7 years. Martin paused. "The name on the co-ownership documents is Serena Pritchard." I stared at him. "She's married," I said. It wasn't a question. My voice came out very flat, like a door closing. "Common law, most likely, or possibly licensed. We're still confirming, but the financial record is clear. She co-owns property with this man. She has an outstanding debt attached to that property, and she has been using her maiden name, Whitfield, for everything up here in Ohio." "Does Connor know?" "No. I only confirmed this last night. I wasn't sure what to do. He's been looking forward to this closing for months, and Martin stopped, pressed his lips together. I didn't want to call him at midnight with something like this. I wanted to talk to you first. Get your read on it. I appreciated that. I also wanted to sit down very badly, but there was nowhere to sit in that hallway. "What do we do?" I asked. "We don't close today," Martin said. "That much is certain. I'm going to tell the title company there's a documentation issue, which is technically true, and we're going to delay. But Connor is going to want a reason, and I think that reason needs to come from you." Connor arrived at 8:58. I heard his voice in the lobby, that warm, easy laugh he has, the one that sounds so much like his father. And my chest tightened in a way I hadn't expected. He came around the corner and his face lit up when he saw me. "Mom, you're here." He hugged me, that solid hug he gives where he actually means it. "Can you believe this is happening?" I hugged him back hard. "I can't," I said, which was the truth. This is the part that people who haven't been in this situation don't understand. You might think, just tell him. Just say the words. It's simple. It is not simple. My son is 34 years old. He is not a child. He loves this woman. He has spent 14 months building a life with her, a future with her. And he is standing in a hallway with his coat still on and his keys still in his hand, grinning because today is a good day, a day he's been working toward for years. How do you hand someone that kind of information in a hallway? How do you say, I'm sorry, but the woman you love is not who she says she is? I have watched my son cry exactly twice in his adult life. Once at his father's funeral. Once when a dog he'd had for 12 years had to be put down. Both times he turned away. Both times he was quiet about it, the way Richard always was, holding it inside where I couldn't quite reach it. I could not do this in a hallway. Martin stepped in. He told Connor there was a documentation discrepancy, a title issue, potentially a cloud on something in the seller's chain of ownership, and that they were going to need to push the closing by a few days while he sorted it out. He was calm and professional, and he said it in a way that sounded routine. Connor's face fell a little. Seriously, how long? Couple days, maybe a week. Nothing that affects the purchase. Connor sighed, the way you sigh when something small but annoying happens on an otherwise good day. He texted someone, Serena, I assumed, and then looked up. She says she needs to reschedule something. Is it definitely going to be this week? I'll call you this afternoon, Martin said. Serena came out of the conference room then. She had composed herself completely. She smiled at Connor, touched his arm, looked at me with that open, easy expression she always had. I have sat across from her at my kitchen table. I have made her pot roast and asked about her work and tried to know her. Hi, Joyce, she said. Hi, sweetheart, I said. I don't know how I said it. I don't know how I stood there and smiled. I think it was the same muscle memory that got me through the weeks after Richard died. The ability to keep your face arranged properly while everything underneath is chaos. She and Connor left together, and I watched them go through the glass doors into the parking lot. He put his arm around her. She leaned into him. Martin appeared at my shoulder. You okay? No, I said. Tell me everything. He told me in his office, with the door closed and a box of tissues on the desk between us that I did not use but was grateful for. The full picture, as Martin had reconstructed it. Serena had grown up in coastal Georgia, met Douglas Pritchard at 24, and they had built what appeared to be a common-law marriage over 8 years. Shared property, shared finances, shared debts. About 2 years ago, something fell apart. The debts remained. Serena left. She came north. She reinvented. She went by Whitfield, her mother's maiden name. She met Connor at a work conference in Indianapolis, and he was, as Martin put it carefully, a person with good financial standing and stable prospects. She had been, in some meaningful sense, starting over. Except Douglas was still there. Still calling, still owed $68,000 that Serena didn't have. A house, however. A house with Connor's name on the mortgage and equity accumulating from day one. That was something. She was going to use the house, I said slowly. We don't know that with certainty, Martin. He looked down at his desk. We don't know that with certainty. But we both knew it was likely. A property. Joint ownership. A marriage coming. There are so many ways to access equity. So many ways to borrow against a home when your name is on the deed. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the same table where I'd taught Connor to do his homework, the same table where I told him his father was gone, the same table where Serena had eaten pot roast and asked for seconds and said, "Joyce, this is honestly the best thing I've eaten in months." I thought about Douglas Pritchard in Savannah, waiting for a call that said it was done. I thought about Connor in his apartment right now, probably on the phone with Serena, probably frustrated about the delay, having no idea. I picked up my phone and called my son. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" I said. "Are you alone?" A beat. "Yeah, Serena just went to run some errands." "Why?" "I need you to come over," I said, "today. Now, if you can." Another beat. Longer. My son is smart. He has his father's ability to read a room, or in this case, a silence. "Mom," he said. "What's going on?" "Please just come over," I said. "I'll make lunch. I need to show you something." He came. I have replayed the next 2 hours many times in my mind. I know that's what you do after something like this. You play it back, looking for the moment where you could have done it differently, softer, better. I don't think there was a better way. I put the folder on the table. I sat across from my son, the same way I've sat across from him his whole life. I told him what Martin had found, piece by piece, the same way Martin had told me, slowly, giving him time to process each piece before handing him the next one. Connor didn't say anything for a long time after I finished. He sat very still. He looked at the documents without really reading them, the way you look at something when you already believe it, and you're just waiting for your body to catch up. "She said she had some student loan debt," he finally said. "She said she'd had a hard few years." I figured she meant, everybody's had a hard few years. "I know," I said. "She never mentioned anyone named Douglas." "I know." He put his hands flat on the table. His father used to do that exact thing. Press his palms flat on a surface when he was processing something difficult, like he needed to feel the weight of solid ground beneath him. Are they actually married?" he asked. "Martin is still confirming. It may be common law. Georgia has common law marriage provisions if you meet certain criteria. The financial record is clear either way." Connor nodded slowly. Then he stood up and walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. "I have a bird feeder out there that Richard put up the spring before he died. I've kept it filled ever since." "I need to talk to her," he said. "I know. I need to hear it from her." "That's your right," I said. "But Connor, wait until Martin has everything documented. Don't go to her right now with half a picture. Let Martin do his job first." He turned around, and the look on his face, I want to say it was devastation. Because it was. But it was also something more complicated than that. It was the look of someone trying very hard to find an alternative explanation. A mistake somewhere. Something that would make this not be true. I recognized that look. I'd had it the morning the hospital called about Richard. That 10-second window where your mind tries to find the exit. "What if there's an explanation?" he said. "There might be," I said. "And you can hear it, but you need to hear it with the full picture in front of you, and you need Martin there." He nodded again. He sat back down. He didn't eat the lunch I made. Martin had everything confirmed within 48 hours. Georgia common law marriage requires cohabitation and presenting as a married couple. Douglas and Serena had done both for nearly 8 years. There was tax documentation. There was a shared bank account. The debt of $68,000 had originated as a personal loan Douglas took out partly to finance a business Serena had pushed for. The business had failed. She had left. He was owed. Connor met with Serena 3 days after the closing was supposed to happen. Martin was there. I was in the waiting room down the hall, which Connor had asked me to be close by, but not in the room. I sat in a hard plastic chair and looked at a landscape painting on the wall, and thought about Richard, and thought about the bird feeder, and thought about how it is both the hardest and most necessary thing in the world to let your child face something difficult without you standing between him and it. I heard nothing through the walls. These were good walls. It took 45 minutes. When Connor came out, he looked older. Not in a bad way. Or not only in a bad way. He looked like someone who had walked through something and come out the other side, which is different from someone who hasn't walked through anything yet. He sat down next to me. "She cried," he said. I waited. She said it was complicated. That she thought it was over, that she and Douglas were done, that it was just paperwork left. She said she was going to handle it. "Was she going to tell you?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "She said she was going to tell me after the house closed, that she didn't want to risk losing everything before she had something stable." I understood what that meant. And I understood also that it was not the same thing as being honest. It was the kind of logic that makes sense from the inside and is devastating from the outside. She wasn't protecting the relationship, I said carefully. She was protecting her plan. Connor looked at the landscape painting. Then he nodded once, very slightly. I didn't push. I didn't say anything else. Some things a person has to say to themselves. Serena left Ohio 2 weeks later. I don't know all the details of what was resolved between her and Douglas, or how the legal question of the common law marriage was officially untangled. That was Connor's to handle with Martin, and he didn't share all of it. He did tell me that Douglas never got his $68,000, at least not from any account connected to my son. He told me the house on Elmhurst Drive is still sitting with an accepted offer, his name only on the paperwork now, and that the new closing date is set for 6 weeks out. He came over for dinner last Sunday. I made roast chicken, which was Richard's favorite and which Connor has always asked for when something is hard and he needs something familiar. We ate at the kitchen table, and he told me about the inspection report on the house, which flagged some old wiring in the basement that he's planning to fix himself. He pulled up photos on his phone, pointing at the junction box like it was a puzzle he was looking forward to solving. My son, fixing things. He paused at one point between bites and said, "I keep thinking I should be angrier." "Are you?" I asked. Some days it just feels, I don't know, sad mostly. I really thought I knew her. I put down my fork. You knew what she let you know. That's all any of us know about anyone at first. He thought about that. "Do you think she was ever real?" he asked. "Like the parts I loved. Do you think any of that was real?" This is the question I had been sitting with too, and I want to tell you the honest answer I gave my son, not the comforting one. I said, "I think she showed you the person she wanted to be, and I think that person was real, in the way that a wish is real. But she wasn't willing to be honest with you, And that's the part that mattered. That's the part that makes the rest of it impossible. He nodded. He went back to his chicken. We didn't talk about Serena for the rest of the evening. We talked about the wiring and the hardwood floors and the kitchen renovation he's planning. We talked about a camping trip he's thinking about taking in the spring. We talked about the bird feeder. He'd noticed it on the way in, noticed it needed to be refilled, and had taken a bag of seed from my garage without asking, because that's the kind of thing he just does. When he left that night, he hugged me in the doorway, the same way he always does. "Thanks, Mom," he said. "For what?" I said. "For not letting me sign that paperwork." I held on to him for a moment. Outside it had gotten dark early the way it does in November, and the street was quiet, and I could see his breath in the cold air when he finally let go and walked to his car. I watched until his taillights disappeared at the end of the block. Then I went inside, put on the kettle, and sat at the kitchen table in the quiet house. "Richard," I thought, "you would have handled it better than I did. You would have known what to say to him. You always did." But then again, I thought of Connor's face in that conference room hallway. The way he'd hugged me. The way he'd said, "Can you believe this is happening?" You also trusted people too easily sometimes. You saw the best in everyone, and you were almost always right, and occasionally you were very, very wrong. Maybe it takes both of us. I poured my tea. I sat in the quiet, and somewhere on Elmhurst Drive, a house with good bones and old wiring sat waiting for my son to come fix it. That's all any of us can do, really. Find the thing worth fixing and do the work. I've been sitting with this story for a few months now, turning it over the way you turn over a stone you found on a path, not sure what's underneath, not sure you want to know, but unable to leave it alone. What happened to Connor wasn't rare. That's the part that still unsettles me. A woman who needed a way out of a financial hole she dug herself into, who found a kind and trusting man, and who made a calculation. It happens every day. What was rare, what I keep coming back to, was the chain of small things that led to the truth being found at all. Martin running a background check out of ordinary professional caution. His paralegal happening to be in that conference room early, me arriving before Connor. All of it lining up in exactly the right order. That's not luck, and I don't call it fate. What I call it is this: the truth has a tendency to surface when people are paying attention. Martin was paying attention. I was paying attention. Even in the moments when I didn't know what I was looking for, I was there, present, not distracted by wanting everything to be fine. I think about Serena sometimes, not with anger, or not only with anger. I think about a woman who spent years building something, watched it fall apart, and then made a series of decisions that were each individually understandable and collectively dishonest. She wanted stability. She wanted a way out. Those are human wants. The place where she went wrong was not in wanting them. It was in deciding that Connor's trust was a resource she could use to get them. That is the specific moral failure at the center of this story. Not desperation, not even deception exactly. It was treating another person's love as a tool, and that is what she passed back to the world. Not consequences handed down from above. Just the natural result of building something on a foundation that wasn't real. You cannot construct a life on a lie about who you are and have it hold. The weight of it will find the weak point eventually. It always does. What I want my son to take from this, what I hope he takes, even if we never say it in so many words, is not cynicism. I've watched people come out of betrayal and close themselves off permanently. And I understand the impulse. When someone you love turns out to be a version of themselves they constructed for your benefit, it rattles something deep. It makes you question your own judgment. Connor said it himself. I really thought I knew her, but here's what I believe, and what I told him as plainly as I could. Your ability to love someone openly is not the thing that failed you. It is, in fact, the thing that makes you worth knowing. What needs to develop alongside that openness is discernment, the quiet, patient work of watching whether what someone does matches what they say. Not suspicion. Discernment. They are not the same thing. Serena said all the right things. She was warm, she was present, she asked good questions and laughed at the right moments. But there were things she never quite explained. Small inconsistencies she deflected with charm. I noticed them and told myself I was being an overprotective mother. I should have trusted the noticing. That's the piece of this I carry forward myself, not regret. I don't think I could have acted differently without the evidence Martin found. But a reminder. When something feels unresolved in a person, when a story doesn't quite close the way stories should, pay attention to that feeling. It is not paranoia. It is intelligence doing its job. Connor is going to be fine. I know this not because I'm his mother, and mothers always say that, but because I watched him sit at my kitchen table with the truth in front of him and choose to face it. That is the thing that cannot be faked. Not charm, not warmth. The willingness to look directly at something painful and deal with it honestly. He has that. He has always had that. The house on Elmhurst Drive is still waiting for him. And I think that's exactly right.